What's up, guys? It is December 11th, 2017. It's Q&A time, Monday, of course. And today was covering reverse dieting or transitioning out of a fat loss phase. So anything pertaining to that. And I got some good questions. So let's go ahead and get to it. If not off-season or a competitor looking to increase metabolism, what's the best method to increase food without gaining excess fat? Been at maintenance for a while and looking to be able to eat more. So, well, I mean, right off the bat there, if you've been at maintenance, then you should be able to eat more, right off the bat to create a caloric surplus. So that, right there, you're eating more. If you've been at maintenance for a while too, then chances are you should be, metabolism should be relatively healthy at that point. You haven't been restricted at least. You're not in a surplus, but you're not in a deficit. You should have, relatively decent insulin sensitivity. I mean, one of your goals there too is going to be to maintain insulin sensitivity the best you can along the way. That way, obviously you're not gaining that excess fat with the weight that's going to, obviously be gained during that period. So increase slowly. I mean, this is actually a, pretty straightforward situation. I mean, there's not going to be an infinite amount of calories you're going to be able to add in. It's not like there's some method that would allow you to keep eating more and more and more. I mean, there will be a ceiling eventually. Sure, you might have some super compensation mode. If you're in a pretty lean state and you're coming off maintenance or a deficit, you might be able to super compensate, really get the metabolism revved up and eat a little bit more at that period. But I mean, it's going to taper off and you're going to have a ceiling. So your goal would be to just gain at a reasonable rate so you can maintain insulin sensitivity and not get, obviously not get fat. So next question, which macro to adjust first and why? Is there a level where it tops off and you start moving the other two? What signs to look for to indicate more food or to hold? Okay, so really, I mean, you could look at cardio in the same light also, in the fact that whatever's really low when you end the cut, logic would probably tell you, hey, let's increase that first, right? If you're doing 2 hours of cardio a day, but food's not super low, then hey, let's get some of that cardio out of there. That's stressful on the body. That's impeding recovery. You're going to take some cardio out. You're creating a surplus right there. Same with the macros. If your fat is super, super low, then let's probably add some fat back in. I mean, there's a lot of health markers and just, functions within the body that rely on dietary fat. So we're going to want to have fat in the diet. Fat's pretty reasonable and carbs are low. Then, hey, let's add a little bit of carbs in. Protein's probably not going to be super low, I'd imagine. I mean, you're at least eating enough protein to probably maintain lean body mass, even if you're ending a cut. So that's probably not what I would increase first. Increase whatever's low. Chances are that's probably going to be your best bet. And I mean, there might be a situation where that varies, but just as a general guideline, I would say increase what's low first. And then that kind of segues into the second part. Is there a level where it tops off and you start moving to the others? Yes and no. If calories are getting crazy high, then yeah, you might just have to keep increasing everything. But let's say it's carbs. I'm probably not going to indefinitely increase carbs because I might run into insulin resistance. With that being said, you can create some insulin resistance just from too high of calories in general. But it's probably going to be a little bit more so with the carbs if you're eating crazy high amounts of carbs. So keep that in mind. Fats, I would probably worry about digestion. Are you impeding digestion with super high fat intake? For some people, it's not a problem. For others, it is a little more of a problem. There are some supplements and things you can take to help increase things like bile acids. That way you can digest more fats. But that would probably be the two things to consider with carbs and with fat. If you're getting up and let's say carbs are getting relatively high, fats and maybe blood sugar starting to creep up a little bit, maybe a tad bit, and You also have a decent amount of fat that maybe increased protein. Your lean body mass has probably increased because you're in a you're in a gaining phase. Hopefully you've gained some muscle, so you can increase protein a little bit there. Though obviously the other macros are going to be somewhat protein sparing, so you could argue, hey, you probably don't even need as much protein, but you have to put the calories in somewhere, so that's where the protein's coming from. And yeah, it can convert to glucose, but there is an additional step or two for that to happen. So at least it's not a straight conversion like like carbohydrates, pretty much glucose anyhow, other than it might be a more complex carb. So there's more chance of it causing that insulin resistance, whereas protein, probably a little bit less chance. So that might be a reason to increase that. Beyond those things, it's just going to be situational. So this is going to be a couple that kind of segue together, but do you keep cardio in, and for how long and how much? And when do you add more workout intensity back in? What kinds of signs do you look for before you let intensity go up? So I kind of touched on the cardio part already. If it's not very high, then I probably would kind of focus on food a little bit more at first and then work on the cardio later. Or maybe just slowly take out the cardio less aggressively. And if cardio is high, then I probably pull the cardio out a little bit quicker and try to get to the food a little bit slower. And if they're food's low and cardio is high, which it can definitely happen, probably just going to want to pull evenly, unless the one consideration there would be that if it's like a lot of HIIT cardio, for example, then it might be causing a lot more stress and on the body and the nervous system. So you might want to kind of lean towards that first, just to kind of lower that stress response. And then as far as the workouts go, that just totally depends on how the person feels. If someone's really beat up after a leaning phase, and I still want them to be training because I want them to take advantage of the extra insulin sensitivity, the new carbohydrates and fats and proteins, or whatever you increase, the new calories coming in, then I probably just back the intensity off and make sure everything's nothing over like a RP of 7 or 8, something like that, where I'm still the partitioning's still happening, still going to break down the tissue some. They're still training the muscle, getting blood in the muscle, getting nutrients in the muscle, and burning some calories through training, of course, but they're not beating up their nervous system. And then once things feel better, can go back to some more failure points in the training. Let's see. If the person was not lean for that long and their set point was still at a higher body fat percentage, would you keep in cardio and cycle calories while maintaining an overall surplus to try and keep fat accumulation low? Okay. Well, you can still, you can obviously still create a caloric surplus and gain muscle in this state too. It's just that the length of time that you're going to be able to go in this surplus phase is probably going to be shorter because your body fat's going to get too high and you're going to be insulin resistant. But I would say you're probably just going to have to go slower. If you sense that your metabolism's a little bit down-regulated from the cut, but you're still not, that lean, then I would say try to first focus on getting your metabolic function up before focus on putting the muscle on. You put a little bit of tissue on, a little bit of lean body mass on in the process, but I would say increase calories slowly, let your body fat adapt to each set point slowly, caloric set point slowly, and hopefully not gain a ton of overall body weight, but you're still getting calories up. And then you're going to see your body will probably allow you to do that for a little bit till your glycogen gets full and your metabolic rate upregulates to pretty much the highest point that it's going to go. At which point, then you're going to start seeing the fact that, hey, if I increase calories, the scale's going up. There's just no way around it. At that point, hey, I'm probably into more muscle growth territory, and then take it from there. But at least at that point, I have my metabolic rate up, I got my food where it needs to be, I didn't gain much body fat, my body should be healthy, and so on and so forth, and then go from there. let's see. This is not exactly in line with the topic, but I'm sure some may be using GH and MK 677, reversing out of their fat loss phase, and I'd love to know what you think about this. Well, on these BG levels from 95 to 109, all the fasted levels are a little higher, never getting over 130 to 140 even after high carb meals. Average being 110 to 120. Do high fasted levels represent insulin resistance? How bad are the fasted levels considering throughout the rest of the day they aren't very high? How much a risk for diabetes would that fasted level suggest if it stays that way? Well, if those postprandial, and I think that's how you say it, levels are actually like 2 to 2.5 hours post carb meal, like they should be, then 110 to 120 is still high. I mean, in all reality, your pancreas should release enough insulin to return your levels to pretty much what your fasted levels are. Maybe a little bit higher, but if your fasted levels are high, then obviously the post-meal levels might also be high. So in this case, I think all these levels are actually kind of high, to be honest. I'd rather see the fasted levels more like, you say 95 to 109. I mean, I'd rather see them 95 or below, at least probably below 90 if possible. And rather see the about 2.5 hours after a carb meal, rather see them not really much over 100. Especially, let's put it this way. If you have 3 hours before your next meal, if you eat a carb meal and then you have 3 hours before the next meal, your blood sugar should be returning pretty much to fasted before you eat that next meal. And if not, if you're overlapping and you're not returning to fasted, then you are probably creating more insulin resistance. So in this case, I would say yes, there is insulin resistance. Even if you're lean, this is still insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, you could call it. Couple ways to go about this. I mean, I have no idea what you're doing with your food as far as like timing food. I don't know how big of a surplus you're in. Maybe it's too much. Maybe you need to lower your carbohydrates, increase some of the other macronutrients. Maybe you need to utilize glucose disposal agents, or maybe you need to consider something stronger than that, like a metformin or basal insulin. I mean, there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of other variables in there, but what I can say is that those levels are higher than I would definitely want to see them in any of my clients. And yeah, that's insulin. It is insulin resistance, and if you let it continue, it's probably only going to get worse, especially if you're just transitioning out of a fat loss phase and they're already that high. So then that could partially just be insulin resistance from the diet, but it could also be from the supplementation of the GH or the MK. You say both. Sounds like both. In which case, I'm not surprised that it's high, because, I mean, MK677 on its own is notorious for blasting blood glucose levels high, very high and very quickly. So maybe try getting rid of that first and see where you're at, and then, go from there. But yeah, I wouldn't hang around those blood glucose levels. Probably not going to get any better from there. So let's see. All right, almost done, guys. Let's see here. How does... Oh, I missed one, huh? Jeez. During a transition phase, if your calories are increased by 6 almonds and you take away 4, how many almonds do you have? Well, 6 minus 4 would be 2, so you have 2 almonds, in which case you have gone back into a calorie deficit, and you've ruined your reverse diet, and you now have metabolic damage. Chances are, if you're only eating 6 almonds, you probably also have metabolic damage. Though proper reverse dieting would be increase of 2 almonds per week. So that 6 should go to 8 the next week. You increase 2 almonds per week and you will not have metabolic damage and you will not get fat. So there you go. Maybe fast metabolism, you could probably increase 2 almonds and 1 asparagus spear per week, but I wouldn't do it anymore. So how does progressing through a prep affect the reverse dieting process? Like, as you're making changes to macros during prep, does that affect your start of the reverse diet? I think I know it. Well, I assume I know what they're asking here. So it sounds like they're asking, does the end, well, a better way to ask this would probably be, does the ending point of the prep affect the way you reverse diet? In which case, definitely yes, 100%. The more the person is down-regulated metabolically, the more careful you have to be. I don't know if that's the good word for it, but the more, more calculated the process has to be. I mean, I think everyone can do it calculated regardless, but I guess what I'm saying is the more important, I mean, certainly it's way more important to be a lot more tedious through this process if you're more down-regulated. So if you really had to hammer it in the prep, especially for a good amount of time, probably consider that your metabolism's down-regulated and that your reverse diet period is going to be pretty crucial to restore metabolic function and to make sure you're not getting fat. Because that's the thing. When you're down-regulated like this, while your insulin sensitivity might be high and what have you, you're also going to be pretty susceptible to fat gain. Adipose tissue insulin sensitivity is also probably going to be high, so you can gain fat. So you're going to need to be more careful in the process. I guess that's a good word for it. And that is it. Huh. I think I got them all, guys. So let me double check here for everyone. That is a wrap. All right, guys, about 17 and a half minutes. Good stuff. Thank you for the questions. Next week we'll do a different topic, and see you guys next time.